It doesn't really matter which side you put all the gears into, but I do find it easier if you put it into the right half or left half if you're looking from the front. So we're going to start off by putting back all the bearings that we took out, 2 in each side, and you want to push them all the way down. Go ahead and choose the side that you're going to put the gears in. Start off with the differential gear. So that's going to lay in just like that. And you'll know if it's in right because the gear will be flush with this hole. Otherwise, yeah, it's going to be very awkward and won't fit properly the other way. Yeah, look at that baby spin. Now we're going to get that little bar, put that back in, push it down all the way. We're going to set it down and we're going to rebuild the idle gear. Now the idle gear gets a bearing on each side. They should slide relatively easy in, just like that. Now you're going to get one of those washers, put it on that middle bar, put the idle gear on, make sure it lies flat. There we go. Then another bearing, or not a bearing, a washer. Sorry about that. Now we're going to move on to the drive gear. Slide one over the shaft, push it all the way back. This goes to that hole. Make sure it's flat. Then the last remaining washer should go right there. And that's it. Now it's time to go ahead and add the white lithium grease. Now this is very easy to pull off. All you're going to do is put it on the very bottom of the differential gear. So you're just going to smear a little bit in between the teeth, roll it, smear some more, and just keep going. Now this, while you're rotating it, it will spread it throughout the other gears. And eventually it'll cover every one of the teeth. Now you do not want to flood the transmission case like you did with the differential gear. You only want enough that's going to coat the gears themselves. That is a perfect amount. So all that's left is you're going to get the other half and gently put it on there. Make sure everything lines up, snap it together, and now it's time to go ahead and put those 6 screws back in. Now when we took them out, I told you to remember that one of the screws is shorter than the rest. The smallest of those screws slides in right there, and the rest are all the same size. If you have a wheelie bar or for the slash rear bumper, remember you're not going to have 2 screws right here. But if you do not have one of those, then there's going to be the 2 less screws going right there. With all those screws taken care of, you get a little piece of electrical tape and you cover this hole that's on the bottom. Make sure that the piece of tape is not that big. And that's it. Your transmission's done. It's not that hard. It's just a lot of steps. Now it's time to reinstall it. So I'm going to go ahead and start off by reassembling by putting on the drive shafts. Now you'll notice that there's a hole inside that bar. There's also a hole inside the yoke. So what you're going to want to do is line up those holes, get that grub screw, slide it through. Now just screw it all the way down. Now it's time to do the same thing with the other side. During this time, I find it to be most convenient to go ahead and attach the whole spur gear back on. So we're going to get that little bar, slide it through that hole, just like that. Make sure it's even on each side. Then you're going to get the slipper clutch backing, and you'll notice that there is a slot for that bar to go into. So just line it up and it should slide all the way back. Next, you're going to want to get the plate. Now the plate has 4 little small nooks where you can see it perfectly fits on just like that. and it should lay completely flat. Next, you're going to want to get the spur gear. Push that all the way down. Then the spring, and of course the 4mm nut. Now there's a little trick that I'd like to do in order to tighten it, because like I said before, we had to use the wheels in order to get leverage. Well, with this, what you're going to want to do is just fold the drive shafts forward, hold them forward, and then you can go ahead and tighten the screw all the way. Now with Traxxas, you do have to adjust the spring. What I do is I collapse it all the way, and then I give it half a turn. And it should be adjusted well enough for the slipper clutch to work properly. Then you're just going to go ahead and put on the transmission by pushing it all the way forward and then all the way down. Just like that. For the Slash and the Stampede, you're just going to slide it all the way forward again and then all the way down. Now you're going to flip it over and redo all 6 of those screws. Now that the transmission has been reconnected, you can go ahead and get that rear assembly and put it back on. Now, if you ever get confused to which way this does fit on there, remember, the shocks always face towards the front wheels. So what you're going to want to do is get the top part of the drive shaft that's coming off the transmission, and you want to go ahead and slide that back on to the lower part of the drive shaft, and do that for both sides. After that's done with, you can go ahead and reattach the rear shock tower by using those 4 screws. Now is the time to go ahead and take off the receiver box and the ESC again so you can put the rear shock tower on. To reattach the rear shock tower, all you have to remember is that the shocks do face the front wheels, just like it is with the Rustler. Now you're going to want to go ahead and slide the top of the drive shaft back onto the lower part of the drive shaft. It should be relatively easy to pull off. Do that for both sides, and then reattach the shock tower to the chassis and transmission using those 4 screws. Now that the 4 screws are in that hold in the rear shock tower with the Stampede, you can go ahead and put in the receiver box and the ESC. And now with the Slash and Stampede, you can reattach the rear body mount with the 4 screws. Now you can reattach the rear A-arms back to the transmission case. Just slide the pin in and screw it all the way down. It's the same thing for the other side. Now it's time to reattach the wheelie bar or rear bumper. So there's 2 little grooves that easily just slide over the base of the transmission on each side. And that should go all the way in. Now there's 3 screws that hold this to the transmission case. The smallest of the screws go inside that first hole right here. The longest of the screws goes in the very bottom hole on the other side. And the medium screw goes inside the remaining hole. So far, everything is looking good. Now it's time to reattach the motor. Now, like I said before, the motor's only held in with 2 screws. So slide it in, match up the holes, and put the screws in. Now you don't want to tighten the screws all the way. What you're going to want to do is keep them just slightly loose. Now it's time to go ahead and put back on the pinion gear. So you're going to face the grub screw right towards the flat edge that's located on the shaft that comes from the motor. You're going to also want to line up the tread from the pinion gear next up to the spur gear. Once you're confident that it's lined up, go ahead and tighten that screw as much as you can, but be sure not to strip it. Once it's tight enough, you can go ahead and start adjusting the pinion gear. Traxxas suggests that you push the gears all the way together and then feed a piece of paper in. Now, with that paper in there, you tighten the screws that hold the motor to the transmission. Then you pull the piece of paper out, and that should give you the right spacing you need between your pinion gear and your spur gear. Go ahead and feed the cables from your motor that hook up to your ESC back through the rear shock tower, and then push the plugs together. Make sure that they're lined up with the right colors. Yellow with yellow, white with white, blue with blue, and black with black, and red with red. Next, you can go ahead and put your gearbox cover back on. Make sure it lays flat. Now remember, there's a smaller screw between the two that hold in your gearbox cover. The smaller screw goes on the bottom, the longer screw goes on top. And the final thing to do is reattach your wheel. Make sure it slides on all the way. Get the 4mm nut and tighten it on there. And that is how to maintain the two-wheel drive transmission for a Slash, Stampede, Rustler, or Bandit. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. Other than that, like, comment, or subscribe if you haven't already. There's also other Traxxas how-to videos that I've done. Go ahead and check them out. Other than that, there is nothing more to say.